Welcome back to Morning Joe. Joining us now from Capitol Hill, Republican Congressman from Virginia and the House Majority Leader, Representative Eric Cantor. Eric, good to have you on the show this morning.
Good morning.
All right, here we go. Let's see what we can get done here. Curious, the White House, the President has put Social Security on the table, correct? The President has put Medicare on the table. It's characterized in the Washington Post as a major shift for the White House and for Democrats. Would you agree that Democrats and the President are working to compromise here and bringing something to the table that they haven't brought before?
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to hearing what the President has to say this morning at the White House. And Mika, we've always said we want to do what is necessary to try and bring this deficit and debt into balance, because if we can get the fiscal house in order here in Washington, people can start to get back to work at home. Okay,
so you say we want to do what is necessary, but you were saying also that in terms of closing loopholes, they must be accompanied by offsetting tax cuts and that you're not for increasing revenue. Is that doing what is necessary to work out a deal, to strike a deal? Is that coming to the table as much as the White House appears to be?
Well, Mika, we've got to remember the context within which we're operating here. You've got unemployment at over 9% officially. Too many people are out of work right now. We've got to focus on the priority here, and that is to get people back to work. And so when the proposal is to raise more revenues, that money doesn't come out of thin air. You know, that means that you're going to take money from people that and businesses that you're relying on to create jobs. So what the approach has been thus far is we've gotten together on both sides of the aisle, and the Vice President has led some talks where we have a blueprint in place that we can have trillions of dollars in savings to begin to manage down the debt and deficit in this country while we are responding to the request of the administration to raise the credit limit.
Ezra Klein.
But agreeing that the money never comes out of thin air, if we go to all spending cuts, you have to take it also, as Republicans at times have proposed to do, out of unemployment insurance, out of Medicaid, and with 15 million people out of work, that's pretty tough. But so I want to ask you, it seemed in the New York Times today that Speaker Boehner has had a meeting with President Obama in which he said that if President Obama is willing to put the entitlements on the table, he's willing to go up to $1 trillion in revenue increases through tax reform. Could you support that?
You know, all of us support tax reform and simplification, and in fact want to lower rates, because if we lower rates, I think that most people would say you're going to have a better environment for job creation. But I can tell you one thing, that we are united as Republicans to say now's not the time to raise taxes. I've talked with the Speaker. He is not for increasing taxes.
So no net revenue increase out of tax reform?
The only kind of situation that I believe you're going to see increased revenues is you're going to see a growing economy. We've got to focus on the things that we've got to do. That's to get the fiscal house in order, but let's put small businesses and entrepreneurs in a position where they're actually going to start to grow again. When they grow, more people go back to work, you're going to see an uptick in revenues in this country.
Steve Ratner?
But Congressman, as you know better than any of us, stuff done in Washington requires compromise, and the spending cuts, I think you would agree, do fall disproportionate on people of lesser means of one form or another. And I don't see exactly how you get to any kind of a budget deal where you get enough support from both sides of the aisle to get this passed without a balanced package that includes some element of revenue increase. You can call them what you want, but closing loopholes on some of these wealthier aspects of our economy and of individuals seem to be what's necessary politically to get this done. So are you, just to try to get you on the record, are you saying you will not support any budget compromise that includes net revenue increases?
Well, what I said yesterday was in response to the President's statement that it's a priority for him to close the corporate loopholes as far as people who own jet aircrafts. And that's never been the issue that has hung up any kind of progress here in town. And if the President wants to talk corporate jet owner loopholes, that amounts to about $3 billion over 10 years. We're talking trillions of dollars in savings. My response was, if the President wants to talk loopholes, fine. We need offsetting tax cuts somewhere else, because we're not for raising taxes. That's not the right thing to do when you've got a sputtering economy and so many people in America out of work.
Look, there are different ideologies that come to the table in this debate, so I want to take someone else's question. Nick Kristof. This is the other side asking you the question, Representative Cantor. The larger question is, do we try to balance budget deficits by just cutting anti-poverty initiatives, college scholarships, and other investments in young people and our future? Or do we also seek tax increases from those best able to afford them? Do we really want to close down the American government and risk another global financial crisis to protect the tax bills of billionaires? Do you see the narrative that is building on the other side? And do you worry about that? Is there a moral question in your mind about equity here?
Well, first of all, no one wants to see America not pay its bills. And Mika, that's why we're going to the White House hopefully this morning to begin the final stage of putting a deal together. But I can tell you, this alleged narrative that may or may not be developing is missing something. And what it's missing is the people in this country who are on tough times right now, the best thing for them and what they want is a job. And so we've got to focus on first things first. You're spending too much money at the federal level. How can you sustain, nor can any family or business sustain, borrowing over 40 cents of every dollar you spend? We're trying to address the problem first, which is the overspending in Washington, at the same time trying to create an environment where the people who are on tough times can actually see some opportunity grow again and they can get back to work.
But also, how could you accept the cuts that the White House is putting on the table without giving some back in return?
Well, I mean, Mika, what I think the insinuation there is that these are easy cuts. I mean, obviously, these are going to be cuts that are going to affect real people.
That's
but
correct.
At the end of the day, what we're trying to do is to create an environment where more people have opportunity to get back to work. And so, again, money doesn't come from nowhere. And if the president is interested in going after billionaires, my response is fine. If it's important to him, we'll respond and say, sure, let's plug some loopholes. In the larger context, yes, we want to go and get rid of these preferences in the code. Our job creator proposal says let's simplify the code, let's bring down corporate rates, individual rates, so we can be more competitive and see jobs grow again. That's absolutely our long-term goal. Right now we've got a situation in the next several weeks we're going to have to address the issue of the debt ceiling, and first things first, let's get the spending under control, and that's why I believe that these trillions of dollars that have been identified through the Biden talks can provide the basis for what I believe is a fair deal for us to go about trying to address the fiscal imbalance in this country.
John Heilman.
Congressman Cantor, let me just ask you a simple question. I think that the deadline that the White House has set out for these negotiations is a real deadline, and if that deadline is not met, do you think there will be serious consequences for the American economy?
You know, I've always said that I took the Secretary of the Treasury at his word when he says it's August 2nd and we need to have acted by then. And I do believe that there are serious consequences whatever happens. So we are looking at this in a responsible manner and trying to begin to make a down payment on managing down the debt and deficit.
All right, Ezra Klein, finally.
In March, your Joint Economic Committee, the Republicans on the Joint Economic Committee, released a report saying that successful deficit cutting, successful fiscal consolidations had been generally composed of 85% spending cuts and 15% revenue increases. And what I can't figure out is what happened between March and now that made that ratio no longer operative. Can you tell me?
Well, I don't think I have ever been for increasing revenues in this kind of economy especially. You know, we got a problem here in Washington, and that is taxpayer dollars are not being accounted for in a fashion that I believe most Americans are expected to account for their own money. And this is their money. And so what we're trying to say is let's begin to manage down the debt and deficit. Let's stop borrowing and spending so much and get a handle on this so we can grow the economy. So I don't believe that there's been any change in our position. We don't support tax increases. We do support trying to bring down the debt and deficit and get the fiscal house in order.
Simple chess, though. The president has moved, and the Republicans will not. So it seems nothing will get done. I mean,
Mika,
I'm reading it.
I think yesterday was very clear. The president insinuated that it's a priority for him to plug the corporate jet loophole. And I said, fine, plug the loophole, just make sure there's offsetting tax cuts somewhere else. We've got to come together where we can agree. And again, I go back to the results of the talks, which have identified over $2 trillion in cuts. Let's start there. Let's make that down payment. Let's not put burdens on small business people or families in this country right now by raising taxes.
All right, Congressman Eric Cantor, thank you very much for coming on the show and putting forward your position. Good luck today at the White House.
Thank you, Megan.